later.
Few minutes later.
1 hour later. 1 nap later.
5 million years later.
1 minute and 7 seconds earlier.
6 months later. 10 hours later. 12 sleepless hours later.
80,000 impressions later.
Would you please stop imitating me? It is starting to get very annoying.
1 long angry line later. 82 kilometers later. 72 hours later. A lot of boring math later. 1 shift later. Approximately 10 hours later. 1 frozen wasteland later. Epilogue. While Patchy pulls himself together, let's see how SpongeBob's party is shaping up. Many versions later. You get the idea. 1 week later. Many memories later. Late again. 7 hours later. 1 week later. 1 million, zillion, jillion, dillion, cotillion times later. 15 minutes later. Yesterday. 3 days later. 1 winner later. A little longer than a few minutes later. 2 hours later. 2 hours later. 1 semester later. Graduation day. 1 entree later. Montage. 4 to 6 days later. 4 to 6 more days later. Many tic-tacs later. 2 hours later. Later, in the void. 6 hours later. A few moments later.
5,000 celebrities later.
The next
The next morning.
The next day. The next Christmas. 1 operation later. Later. 1 little boost to the surface later. 1 shift later. Many unbearable hours later. 1 pathetic sob story later. 3 hours later. 3,000 whoop-whoos later. Flashback. End of flashback. 1 hour later. Several long days later. The next morning. Tomorrow for sure. 1 pair of pants later. 4 to 6 weeks later.